To harness the full potential of the labor force, we need to reimagine work. We need to redesign workplaces so that they are better aligned with the lives of the people who work in them. And we need to redefine what makes a good and successful employee so that performance is no longer measured by how many hours an employee puts in, but by how effective and efficient employees can be. The Redefining Work Summit brings together leading academics, corporate experts, policymakers, and the media to set a new research agenda for the 21st century. Our goal is to redesign and redefine work so that people and businesses thrive.
The goal of this video is to provide starting points for designing workplaces of the future. This video focuses on principles and frameworks, not step-by-step instructions. Our hope is that these principles will guide your efforts to build a lasting workplace structure and culture where people can thrive and companies can win in the global marketplace.
One of the key parts of a work redesign approach is to have everyone look at their assumptions about how we work and really take managers as well as employees through some reflection and experimentation to try out new ways of working and let go of the old expectations when they don't make sense.
The first principle is total work redesign. A redesign model operates on the level of an entire team or organization, instead of accommodating each employee one by one. In order to move from the Mother May I individual approach to a total work redesign, organizations must focus on a mind shift or a disruption of culture. This shift will move the cultural focus from where and when work is done to a focus on delivering results.
So we've been wondering why there's been this stall in how we do flexibility, and it may be that we need to really change our whole approach. So we've been thinking about a work redesign model that approaches these changes collectively, has whole teams or organizations really look at how they do the work as well as when and where they do their work. And that's quite different from that individually negotiated accommodation model that seems to have stalled.
This is not flexibility, the typical accommodating a stressed worker who may need to stay at home with their sick child or else come in late so they can take the child to a dental appointment. It's not that kind of flexibility. What we're studying is a new way of working where flexibility is the norm, not the exception. So it's no longer Mother May I asking a supervisor, can I do something, but thinking of flexibility as a matter of course. People love the freedom and they love the sense of trust, that their employers trust them to get the work done.
In a work redesign model, the stated rationale is the way we work is problematic, both for businesses and for employees, and so changes can improve both the work itself and work-life issues. In an accommodation model, individuals, employees initiate the change by asking for a flexible work arrangement. In a work redesign model, the change is initiated by the manager of a team, department, or division. Similarly, there's differences in who's involved, individual employees in the manager dyad, or a whole team and department with a facilitator available to guide the process. The scope of change differs. In an accommodation model, a policy creates the possibility that an individual may deviate from what still is treated as the normal schedule or the normal location. In a work redesign model, everyone is asked to challenge the norms and expectations about how they work. This may involve changes in time and place, but it's also about processes and interactions and low-value work. In the accommodation model, the desired outcome is to help the individual who asked for it change his or her schedule and improve their work-life situation. And in the work redesign model, there's a broader hope that we will be able to improve work processes through planning, prioritization, the low-value work, and greater efficiencies, and at the same time improve employees' lives through greater control and predictability regarding their schedules.
We really want to change the language away from the clockworks of work and that being important to talking about the objectives. I find that in an academic environment, most of us talk about, I worked the whole weekend as a badge of honor. I'm trying not to say those things, and I'm trying to encourage other people to not think that long hour, hard weekend work is a sign of productivity.
Once an organization is ready for work redesign, it needs to identify a starting point. Research shows that starting at the team level enables bumps to be smoothed out, gains leadership buy-in, and fosters ownership at many levels.
We recognize that much of the change we want to drive needs to happen at the individual team level or between a teammate and the manager. But those conversations will only happen in a genuine and real way if there's a degree of trust between the people manager and the teammate in order to free themselves to have those conversations.
I studied 3 groups of software engineers in very different cultural contexts, one in China, one in India, and one in Hungary. I chose these groups specifically because each of them was equally productive, and each of these groups was absolutely convinced that their way was the only way if they were going to be competitive in the global market. And so I went and I studied each of these groups, and you know what I found? They didn't work the same at all. They worked totally differently. And then I went and I shared this with each of the groups, and they were shocked. How could you possibly do it differently and be equally productive? So do you know what differed? It wasn't how the engineer acted or how the manager acted. It was how they interacted. And so I started to wonder about maybe the real potential is if we start thinking about how teams actually interact.
Successful work redesigns are rolled out at the team level and strike a balance between having enough stability and structure so teams can coordinate their work, build relationships, and have personal conversations, while also having enough freedom so that employees have control over their schedules.
I think some executives in some of the places we've studied thinks it's all flexibility all the time and we've lost control. Of course you need to get together from time to time. The team needs to work either virtually or face-to-face to build a sense of purpose and trust. So we have to do that balancing act between stability and flexibility. We want stability, for instance, in fairness and other kinds of rules that we've had, clear expectations, feedback, and routines.
Another important starting point is a pilot program. Pilot programs enable modifications and improvements before a program is rolled out on a larger scale. And pilot programs enable leaders to prove that the solutions work here in our own organization.
You must pilot, you must measure before and after. And one of the reasons is if you don't pilot, you won't be able to prove that this is the reason for the positive deviance in that particular cohort that you're testing. And people inside corporations, I find, must see with their own eyes on their own population. Doesn't matter how many studies you show them, what consultants you bring in, no matter how much logic you use, you have to show them it's the only thing that works.
I think it's about proving it. For me, it's been one team, and they have to see that it works, and then it just like catches on like wildfire. But until that first team has really bought in and seen that actually it applies in their world, in their organization, it takes a lot of external support to really hold their feet to the fire and to give them the confidence that it's going to be okay and to work through it.
So I would really agree with that because, as you can imagine, in the clinical academic arena, there is pushback. There are some departments where the clinical chiefs tell us, well, it's too expensive, we can't do this. That's not the place to start. We started with those that have a real interest to be able to iron out how this all might work, to optimize it, and then have more dissemination. I think that's part of the implementation plan.
Measurement is really important. So of course the measurement enabled us to get a baseline, and you can measure progress off of the baseline. But even beyond that, measurement establishes accountability. And in the corporate context, anything that matters does get measured. So not having rigorous measurement would inadvertently be sending a signal that this doesn't matter. And in our company, we also share all of our demographic data openly inside the company. And that creates, not only does that create a level of accountability for every leader in the company, but it also engenders a lot of trust.
Pilot programs can help an organization figure out how to address the cultural issue that may undermine the success of a policy.
Here were all these policies that were actually not being taken. And so the work led us to an aha moment, and where we realized that the issue had less to do with the availability of policies, but more that these policies that were in place were totally misaligned by the faculty's core value of what it takes to be a successful researcher or a successful academic physician. For example, sabbatical leave. Very few of my clinical faculty colleagues take it. Why? Because they don't want to burden their colleagues for doing so. We concluded that these policies, because they violated the core values of physicians and what they view as what it takes to be successful at Stanford, we needed to leverage these core values and reinvent new approaches to actually be successful if we wanted to get any real change to occur.
When we step back and say, what has really made a difference? What matters most in this journey? And it starts with clear, visible senior leadership support for this and priority around it and accountability. So having our CEO stand up and say to all the leaders in the company and to the board, this is a priority, matters. It makes all the rest possible. It doesn't ensure success, but it creates the possibility of success.
So there's still a lot to figure out about how to scale these changes, how to make them adopted more broadly, and how to sustain them. And so one of the challenges we have at this point is how do we do this meaningful work, make these meaningful changes in the organization, but make it clear and simple enough that those who are interested in it are ready to take the leap and give it a try.